Hi everyone, I'm thriller author j.f.penn, and today on Killer Thriller TV, I'm here with CJ Lyons. Hi CJ!
Hey Joanna, how are you doing?
I am very good, and I should mention that CJ is a New York Times best-selling thriller author, which is always important to say, and has so many books. I'm very excited to interview CJ. So why don't you start by just telling us a little bit more about your background?
Well, I'm actually originally a pediatric ER doctor, and I practiced medicine for 17 years before I took a leap of faith to write full time. So my first book came out in 2008, and it was a national bestseller. And since then, I've hit the New York Times list, the USA Today list, and I guess just about every book-selling list out there. So.
That's fantastic. And I mean, what's brilliant is, you have this completely different career, presumably running around like a mad thing in ERs, and then, you become a writer. I guess your life is quite different.
Well, my life is quite different, but the emotion I'm putting into the books comes straight from that adrenaline rush of the ER. At least I hope it does. That's what I'm trying to give my audience.
Yeah, and your tagline is thrillers with heart. So, what does that actually mean to you? And I guess why is that important?
Well, when I first started out, I had a hard time describing my books to agents and editors that I was pitching. And so I actually developed a whole subgenre of thrillers with heart. And I use that now to describe my work because there's plenty of car chases and explosions, and there's, very fast-paced thriller pacing. But the real heart of each of my novels is relationships between people, whether it's between two people who are falling in love, such as the Hart and Drake medical thrillers, or if it's a mother who's trying to deal with the pressures of her family and their needs, and balancing that against her needs at work, such as the Lucy Gardino FBI thrillers. So I incorporate that emotional heart in each of my books.
Absolutely. And I guess, some of the your experiences in the ER probably have come through into your books.
Oh yes. Any book that has medical scenes, those scenes all come from real life medicine. And in fact, even most of the crimes that I use in my books, even the ones that are really horrendous and outrageous, those mostly come from real life criminals. I have done a lot of research. It's amazing the things that happen to real people in real life. And in fact, a lot of times I have to dilute those realistic portrayals because my readers would never buy it, even though it really happened. So it's one of those things where truth is, stranger than fiction, but we have to make the fiction as compelling as possible.
Absolutely. So what are some of I guess, the themes that run through all of your series?
Well, that's a really an interesting question because when I first developed the thrillers with heart, I thought the theme for everything I wanted to do was going to be basically that heroes are born every day and that we can all change the world. And that's been the theme of pretty much everything I've written since kindergarten. But as I dug deeper, I realized that I have two recurring themes in pretty much all of my adult books, and those are betrayal and loss. And I think part of that comes from the fact that those are two things I have difficulty dealing with in my own true life. I first started writing thrillers after a fellow pediatric intern who was a very dear friend was murdered. And that's when, in order to deal with that, just avalanche of grief and the new world that I found myself in where something that terrible could happen, I wrote my first thriller, Borrowed Time. And also, I think there's in all of us that kind of gut-wrenching fear of betrayal from someone that we ultimately trust or even love, and what that would do to us. And that's how that thread goes through many of my thrillers, including my book that hit #2 New York Times bestseller list, Blind Faith. That book, every single scene has a betrayal in it. And it's a very emotionally heart-wrenching book, I think, because of that. Because you see the betrayals from both sides, from the person doing the betraying as well as the person on the receiving end. And so, I love getting down into those deep, dark, emotional, crevices.
Fantastic. So that's that kind of emotional side. What about the settings for your books? What are the kind of places that you like to put your characters in?
Oh, I love using small, isolated towns or places where you can't get backup, where you can't have, the brilliant computer CSI scientist suddenly solve your problem. Um, I have had books set in very small rural communities where the law enforcement officers are so overwhelmed and understaffed that they physically can't even make it to a crime scene in time to help my characters. And I love doing that because I think it gives people that kind of crucible effect, where things are happening and there's just no escape. You have to make the choice to stand up and take care of them yourself because you can't depend on anyone else helping you. And I think that's a really fun way to put a thriller. It gives you that kind of high intensity, high pressure situation. But it's also very realistic. I come from a small town in Pennsylvania. I worked community pediatrics in a little town where, we had hitching posts for the Amish buggies, and there was no backup if you needed it, and the weather was bad and life flight couldn't fly. So that's very realistic that things, do happen that way. And there are places in America where people can get away with murder simply because, the law enforcement agencies are so overwhelmed and understaffed. I've even begun a charity to help support them. The Buy a Book, Make a Difference charity. I began it last July. And since then, we've raised $28,000 for charities, including literary charities. And we've also raised money for 28 scholarships for police officers from underserved communities to go get CSI forensic training so that they can properly develop crime scenes. And that has been overwhelming. We've received applications from literally all over the world, including all over the United States. So.
Wow, that's so good. It's brilliant that you're still able to impact, I guess as a doctor, you're able to help people in a way, and being a writer, you're still able to help people in many ways.
I know, and that's what I love about it, because so many people ask me, well, how could you leave medicine? And that was really tough. It was the toughest decision of my life, but I couldn't turn my back on a dream come true, like becoming a professional writer, just like I couldn't turn my back on my dream of being a doctor. So I really felt I've gone in the right direction. I've sold almost 2 million books, and I've gotten thousands and thousands of emails from fans saying that my books have helped them through some, part of their life that's been difficult for them. So I feel like I can still empower and inspire people through my work. And now that I'm doing the Buy a Book, Make a Difference charity, I can also impact real life people that maybe even have never even read my books. So to me, it's just very, very, I don't know. I just feel so thankful to all the law enforcement professionals that have helped me, and it's such a blessing to be able to give something back.
Fantastic. Now, why don't you tell us a bit about your latest book?
Oh, okay. Well, I just launched yesterday, in fact, Edge of Shadows, which is the long-awaited Shadow Ops finale. This is a book that my readers have been screaming for over 2 years, and I apologize. I'm so sorry it took me so long. But this is Rose and Billy's story, and those guys, they just deserved a truly epic love story. So this one actually has... Actually, I don't even think there's a sex scene in it. The first 2 books are pretty sexy thrillers. This one, Edge of Shadows, is it's more of a love story, but it's a love story wrapped in a very high-octane adventure. So I think people will really like it. It's only been out there for 1 day, and I already have 2 5-star reviews and been getting some emails from fans that are speed readers who have enjoyed it. So it's a book that's a gift to my fans and a thank you for them being not just generous in their support, but also so patient and waiting for me to find the right story for these characters. And then my next book, coming out the end of August, is coming from St. Martin's Minotaur, and that's Hollow Bones. And that one is the 3rd in the Caitlin Tierney FBI series. And this one's a lot of fun because it takes Caitlin totally out of her comfort zone, in fact, out of the country, to the jungles of Guatemala.
Cool.
And she is searching for a girl who has been missing from a cruise ship, and she discovered that she actually got off the boat in Guatemala. She's not certain if she got off under her own volition or if there's something else going on. and she has to go into the wilds of the Guatemalan jungle, and there's an ancient Mayan pyramid that has been covered up by the jungle and hidden for centuries, and there's some devious medical scientist stuff going on, and so this one's kind of fun. It's kind of an action adventure and medical thriller and FBI thriller rolled into one. And yes, for you guys that love Jake Carver, the kind of rogue FBI agent from the second book, Black Sheep, he is back. Jake is back, and he's better than ever. So,
and that one actually sounds, definitely down my alley, because I really like the kind of the ancient stuff and temples and Temple of Doom style. But how do you actually research stuff like that? Do you go on research trips, or how do you do that?
Well, I wanted to go on a research trip. I actually had originally planned to go to like Belize and do a research trip there, because it's a bordering country to Guatemala, so it would have been very similar. And unfortunately, though, because of editorial deadlines, I had to cancel those plans. So I had to actually research this one through Google Earth, YouTube videos. I found several people that either came from Guatemala or had visited there, and I interviewed them. I've been myself to ruins in Mexico, and I've also been to jungles and rainforests in Africa and Australia, so I kind of used my own sensory memories to put that together. And then the medical stuff was a lot of fun. I actually did a lot of research on that. And I think when people see this book and read what it's really about, it's about some very interesting stuff that's happening right now in our own world. In fact, it's been a big deal in the UK for you guys, which is the traffic in human tissue and the possibilities of certain viruses becoming populated throughout people that receive these tissues. So it's pretty interesting stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the reader reaction to this is.
That's awesome. Now, I mean, you said there obviously that you've been traveling, you've done all these things, and I always like to know, are thriller writers are as exciting as their books? Now, I have seen pictures of you on a shooting range, I believe, at Quantico, I think. Yeah. Now, so what would you say? Are you that exciting, CJ?
No, I wish I was. I go out and I have a great time when I'm doing research. I've made 2 trips to Quantico, and I have actually shot with them. I even lived in an FBI agent's house because I wanted to see how she juggled the need. She had 2 teenage kids and a loving husband, and how she juggled that with her career at the FBI. I've been to the CIA headquarters at Langley, which was quite an experience. But the biggest thing I find as far as research is people. It's just sitting and talking and listening to their stories, because you are going to find something that is beyond your wildest imagination if you just listen to what has actually happened to people. And in fact, as a thriller writer, my biggest job is to then take that story that happened in real life and make it something that is going to be credible and interesting and compelling to my readers and fit the needs of my characters. So that's actually the real work. But yeah, in reality, my life is pretty boring. I'm a hermit. I sit at a keyboard writing about 12 to 14 hours a day, and occasionally my friends will come knock on the door and drag me out for lunch or dinner.
So what about your writing life at home then? Tell us a bit about your writing space and how your writing day goes.
Well, I work on a laptop, so my writing space is pretty much anywhere where I can sit down. I've actually even invested in an exercise desk so that I can do some work on there while getting some exercise, because it is terribly sedentary business, this writing job, compared to running around the ER at least. I'll take, walks to get my thoughts together. I'm not very disciplined as far as having like an actual word count or schedule. I actually rebel at any kind of suggestion of a schedule. So I pretty much I know where my deadline is, I know how fast I write, and I divide my time between getting new scenes on the page and coming up with ideas for the next scene, since I don't outline. I'm a seat of the pants writer. and doing a lot of research. A lot of times I'll do research in preparation for a book before I start it, but quite often I'll get into it and take an unexpected turn, down a new alleyway as the plot twist, and then I have to do research, kind of on the run as well. So that keeps me a little busy.
And you live by the beach, don't you?
Yeah, that's quite lovely. Although it's raining today, but I think it's the first time we've ever chatted that it's actually been raining. Yeah. It's usually bright sunshine, but so I can't complain. But yeah, that's the best thing for me is I'll go for a walk on the beach and I'll come back after a mile or two, and it's like my head is filled with these characters talking to me, and all I can do is rush to the computer and try to get them down.
But not that writers are crazy or anything. We don't have like voices.
No, we do. I do. I don't know about you, but it's one of the few careers where you can actually say that and not worried about someone wanting to give you a dose of antipsychotics. So it makes it quite fun.
It does. And actually, what's so funny about, because I'm a thriller writer too, and, I write kind of murder scenes, and so do you, and we're all actually quite nice people, aren't we?
Yeah. Honestly, I have not met a not nice thriller writer. You meet people like Lee Child. I mean, he is just the greatest guy. He's so sweet. And David Morrell. I mean, talk about your soft-spoken professors, and yet you read his books, and you're like, whoa. And Steve Barry, such a Southern gentleman, and, so yeah, I mean, every thriller writer I've met has just been awesome.
It's cool. So you've mentioned a couple of writers there, but who do you read for pleasure? Because I know you're a big reader as well.
I am, and it would take me an hour to list them all.
A couple. Well, what are you reading right now?
Yeah, some of my favorite readers, fellow thriller writers that I'm using to learn things from are Lisa Gardner, who I just adore. Not only is she a wonderful person, she's been an inspiration and somewhat of a mentor to me. And when I read her books, each of her books, she just pushes the edge on the writing craft. And I'm not certain that readers appreciate that as much as fellow writers might. But when I see some of the things she does with setting and point of view and pacing, I'm just gobsmacked. And I'm just like, okay, how did she do that? And I want to learn it. I read a lot of YA. Some of the best literature out there right now, quite frankly, is young adult. And so I read tons of YA. And a lot of that is just to soak up the world building and the character voices that they do so well. And then I read a lot of nonfiction because of my research. Right now I have about half a dozen books on my desk that are all about psychopaths and their personalities and stalkers and obsession. Because I'm working on a new Lucy book. So, it kind of goes right into the Lucy territory.
That's fantastic. Right, so where can people find you and your books?
Oh, well, you can find me on my website, cjlyons.net. All the information for all of my books is there, as well as links to my Tumblr and my Facebook feed.
Fantastic. Well, thanks ever so much for your time, CJ. That was brilliant.
Thanks for having me.